So let's introduce ourselves to all the ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and then talk about this forum.
Okay. I'm Hannah Newman. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Kent, and my research is looking into the diagnosis of autism using multisensory immersive environments. But I'm particularly interested also in how the children that I work with who are on the spectrum also engage in the performance and co-create alongside me.
Oh, thank you. My name is Astrid Briel. I am also a PhD student at the University of Kent. My research probably maps onto the main topic of the forum probably the most neatly, because I'm looking at the aesthetics and ethics of participatory performance. I'm specifically really interested in agency and how that kind of shows or demonstrates the way that aesthetics and ethics are sort of inherently connected within participation, even if often in discussion they're separated.
Which is something that really came to the fore in our planning for the forum, so apt. I'm Robbie Wilson. I'm also a drama PhD student at the University of Kent, and I'm using participatory performance to facilitate playful interactions between people and the environments that they inhabit, specifically outdoor environments. So taking performance outside of performance spaces and making the world generally a more playful place. That is done. So why did we want to do this forum?
Well, I think that there were two things that we were a little sort of frustrated by and kind of struck us in the way that participation as a form or a genre or a mode of art is generally described as. I think firstly there's a real preoccupation with the ethical evaluation and impact and benefit of taking part in any kind of participatory activity, and that's not to say that that isn't valid or actually an incredibly interesting thing to look at, but when it's foreground as the most significant thing about participation, I think you lose the art. The other thing I think that we were a little that we were interested in doing, because it doesn't seem to be done very much, is that there is a lot of talking about participation, and participation is an act of doing. It's an act. It's in the act of engaging with something that the participation, that the interesting thing about participation happens. And so we felt that it would be really interesting to have that as an event rather than simply talking about it.
And
Absolutely.
I think also combining academics and artists. We are kind of in somewhat an academic institution, we are kind of contributing to that frame, but we're also practitioners aside from that. And we really wanted to strike up the conversations between artists and academics and place kind of equal importance on both within a more conversational situation.
So yeah, it's important to point out that all three of us are all practitioners as well as being academics, like you say. So we really wanted to bring an aesthetic focus back to discussions on participatory performance, and also to explore that through doing as well as just talking about things, because I think we're all very much of the opinion that through practice research you generate knowledge that is every bit as important as the kind of linguistically based knowledge that's produced through kind of traditional analyses, and we really wanted to bring that to bear on the discussion around participation and participatory arts. But so who did we want to attract? I mean, we've spoken about artists and academics, but it's an incredibly wide field, participatory arts.
Yeah, and so one of the other things that I think we were really keen on is that it wasn't just that we had people from different sort of, from different strategies of looking at these practices, but actually that we had a really as wide as possible a range of interdisciplinary artists, who work with lots of different modes of practice that will all have certain things in common, but actually one of the things that for me that was a real delight, and I think also for others in the event, is getting into contact with practices that use a lot of the same strategies of the stuff that I've been looking at for the last 3-4 years, but actually that are completely different forms of work and that have different ways of engaging people. And I think that was a real strength, but also I think something that we kind of set out to do from the beginning.
And I think that's reflective of us as the team, because
Yes.
we all have very different kind of ways of engaging in participatory performance, and we kind of managed to get an even wider range of practices that came to the forum.
So we really drew on our own kind of interests as different kind of strands, I suppose, within participatory performance and art generally, in order to bring together those different perspectives from different sectors within the art world, and also then to have that conversation with academia also. I wonder if there's anything you'd like to say on that point about the practice as research, artists and academia discourse that we were interested in.
Well, I guess in some ways the structure of the event was took a practice as research approach. It was by doing certain things and by curating a room full of people who all had slightly different experiences of engaging with a particular topic through doing something, that the entire forum was kind of aimed at exploring the topic of, in this case, the aesthetics of participation, through a kind of practice as research frame. And I think there's something interesting you've mentioned, because all three of us have engaged in practice as research as part of our PhD projects, but actually we're all doing that in quite a different way. And I think there's something really interesting in that I think came out in the forum, in both the planning and the final event of the forum, that it had a similar, I think, interest in how we can engage with the question through practice, and actually what different things can we learn through different modes of practice and different ways of applying, not so much applying practice, but kind of engaging through practice with something.
And we wanted to kind of hybrid between the academia and artist world through the actual nature of the forum. So it wasn't kind of a traditional academic conference, but it wasn't quite a performance festival. It was somewhere in between, in which we kind of managed to reduce the hierarchy down that can perhaps be seen in academic conference, so that people were on level playing fields, were all working, discussing, and practically doing stuff together.
Fantastic. And so I think in a way the forum ended up as a kind of, like you said, like a performance festival, but one that took on a kind of reflexive edge or character, because it had also kind of analysis of the performances that we all engaged in built into the framework of the performance, which was something that I think we all and the participants themselves found really, really interesting and rewarding. But there was also the fact that, and I think this is something original about the forum format that we developed, that everybody who attended also contributed as well. And I think this feeds back into your point that you were saying about everybody being on a level playing field as well.
Yeah, because I think one of the intentions that I think was one of the successes of it was that we weren't just curating a program of interesting things, like of some workshops and some talks that you could engage in, but what we curated was a group of people from different backgrounds and from different sort of disciplines and ways of engaging with the particular question we were interested in, to work together for 2 days and to encounter different practices and different modes of participation and different ways of engaging with questions and different questions to ask around participation. And I think that was a really interesting thing that came out in how it ran as an event and the way that people engaged with it, that it was more than just the way that you might go to a performance festival to go and see or take part in stuff, or the way that you might go to an academic symposium and listen to things. It was much more of a two-way relationship, I think.
And I think that also kind of reflects, going back to practice as research, reflects the nature of practice as research as kind of operating at, certainly for me, at the threshold between academia and the art world.
Yes.
And so this kind of two-way conversation that we were able to build up through the careful planning of the programme and through our call for participation. I think also in bringing those people together from different areas and from different practices, or practical backgrounds, we were able to investigate the nature of practices research in a certain sense as well.
Yeah.
And to find out more, I think you're going to have to read the text. Practices research, embedded within the journal submission as well.
Or play the twine and engage with all the materials in a participatory way.
What could be better?
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like your plug, Robbie. That was a very good end.